I recorded my album Silver Dove for those of you who feel alone, unseen or unheard. The songs on the album tell my journey through some significant personal challenges and how faith and knowledge have brought me through. So if you feel lonely, ashamed or misunderstood, my album is for you. I want you to know that you are not alone. Now I share my Silver Dove story in the hope that it enlightens people in our worlds, perhaps our teachers, doctors, parents or church leaders, to glimpse a reality beyond standard textbook thoughts. My name is Tiffany Layell and I was born with spina bifida and hydrocephalus. At 4, I was prescribed renal medication that caused horrendous side effects that were repetitively misdiagnosed as psychological trauma for the next 20 years. I also battled attention deficit disorder, which I suspect the medication may have contributed to. Attention deficit disorder was diagnosed when I was 24. When I began treatment for ADHD and was taken off my renal medication at age 24, despite the turnaround of life, I found myself in a really dark place, shrouded in hidden shame, guilt and grief. 20 years of debilitating medication side effects had cost me relationships, impaired my cognition, impacted my education, stolen opportunities and damaged both my physical and mental health. I remember thinking to myself, life with these side effects is all I've known since I was 4. I remember saying to God, if you want me out of this pit, it's up to you now. I don't know how to get out. People say they understand me, but even most professionals aren't able to read me correctly. I've done everything I know how to do, so where do I go from here? I had coffee with an older lady from church a couple of hours after praying that prayer, and she shared her story with me. For the first time, I've experienced the restorative power of connection through vulnerability. Connection gave me a voice and empowered me to share my own story. Today, I tell the experiences behind Silver Dove.
Once I had a secret love.
The first track on my album Silver Dove is Secret Love. Secret Love reflects the wonder and innocence of my preschool years. I was 2.5 when Mum and I left my father and moved in with my great-grandparents. The time we spent with them was filled with laughter, peace and belonging. After early attention, my great-grandparents' home was a sanctuary, a place filled with simple joys, strong faith and values. They often sang old songs like, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. There's not another one to take your place, baby face." And that's what I felt. I was their sunshine, irreplaceable and valued. Spina bifida and hydrocephalus had affected the development of my brain and spine, but from a young age I had a deep love for God, life and people. I loved learning and discovering creation and especially loved music. Bring Me to Life is the second track on my album Silver Dove. It reflects the emotional turmoil of my life, from early childhood, around the age of 5, through to 24 when it was finally discovered that the renal medication I'd been prescribed was responsible for dramatically life-altering side effects. My preschool years had been full of happy memories, and to this day some of them are still vivid. I remember making Thomas the Tank Engine cupcakes with Mum and doing fun obstacle courses in the living room. I remember our peanut butter and banana sandwich picnics and with lime milkshakes and hot chips in newspaper. When I started the renal medication at the age of 4, it felt like a cloud descended over my mind. By age 5, I lived in a world of paranoia, suspicion and fear. Sometimes I knew what was realistic to be suspicious about, but other times I didn't. The closer people were to me and the more I had to do with them, the more paranoid I became, which affected my ability to connect with people. I clearly remember the day my brain dissociated from myself and the whole world and everyone in it suddenly didn't feel real, myself included. One minute I understood what I was reading and what was required, and in a split second I had no idea. As the side effects worsened, my concentration vanished. I'd lose chunks of time, unable to remember what I'd just learned. Sometimes I would stare absently for 45 minutes or more. Teachers grew frustrated, students avoided or teased me, and my confidence faded. At school, I was often isolated, bullied or misunderstood, and segregated from my peers on the grounds of safety. I wasn't allowed to use the play equipment or walk the same route to class as the other kids. Much of the time, I had a support teacher or parent helper peering over my shoulder and making condescending remarks. I was even used as punishment for the naughty kids. Misbehaving students would have to sit next to me. It concerned me that the definition of punishment was me. I had no friends for the most part, and hallucinations and nightmares haunted me. Real people would be sitting with me, but then they'd appear to float to the other side of the room. I saw things, heard things, and felt things that weren't actually there. Villains and terrorists would walk through floating portals into my room and chat to me like buddies. I had trees appearing to grow on my bedroom walls that would breathe blood-curdling threats. Characters hovered over my bed and threatened me with daggers, and a ghost-like little old man would walk past my window each night. I didn't tell anyone. I thought it was just my imagination. Comprehending the world became impossible. Managing noise and chaos became impossible. I grew up amidst parental divorce and was the subject of family law court battles, as many kids are. One of my earliest memories of my father was when I was 3. He claimed that Mum had a problem with her brain and couldn't look after me properly. He said that she would likely run away from me and that my family didn't love me and wanted me dead. I remember thinking even at that age, what sort of parent tells their child that their family wants them dead? In the beginning, there would be months at a time between my father's visits. Mum was tapped on the shoulder from behind when we were out one day, and as she turned, a stranger snatched me from her. He wrapped his arms tightly around me and said, "Mummy's going now." I started to panic, but then Mum shot me a huge smile. I thought she ignored my fear and didn't care. In reality, she had smiled to ease my concern and disguise her own fear. It was her way of trying to settle the potentially volatile situation. I hadn't recognised my father until Mum said, "Give Daddy a great big cuddle so we can get going." Mum never said anything bad about my father to me, but she often picked me up on my annoying habits like swinging my jaw from side to side or repetitively flicking my hair or clearing my throat. I was often in trouble for taking so long to get ready or for forgetting to put the dishes away, that kind of thing. Although they're little things in the big picture, I began to believe there was very little I could do right. I felt unacceptable and wondered if Mum really loved me. At age 9, I stopped seeing my father and visited my first psychologist. The therapist asked me if I thought what my father had done to me was bad. I didn't know what she was talking about, but in that one session, the psychologist undermined my faith, my church, my relationship with my mum, the reality of my disability, and the credibility of my specialists. After that, I didn't know who or what to trust. There was some inappropriate physical contact from the psychologist that day too, and she instructed me to keep the session confidential, even from Mum. At 10, when my renal medication was increased to the adult dose, my health spiralled with more side effects. I began vomiting almost daily, having seizures and losing my appetite. Insomnia hit even harder. Paranoia and suspicion hit even worse than before, and I became suspicious of everyone from my family, medical specialists and teachers, to strangers in the community. I wrestled with intense feelings of aggression toward others, without explanation, and I strove to suppress my anger. Depression and anxiety became debilitating. By age 12, I had internalised guilt and shame, believing my illness was discipline from God. I thought acknowledging pain was wrong because there was no medical proof. By now, I was constantly conscious of my sin and failures. The third song on my Silver Dove album is called No Time to Die, and it's about my journey from pain and hopelessness to purpose. Throughout junior high school, from the age of 12, I was sent to the school counsellor most days. Sometimes because I didn't feel safe in a classroom where chairs were flying and tables were being overturned, and other times simply because I had taken my books to the sick bay to study somewhere quiet. It always struck me as odd that I was the one who seemed to need therapy for those situations. When I was 13, I was sent to the school psychologist in addition to the school counsellor. Psychologists and counsellors were in a tough spot, really. They didn't understand the neurological and medical complexities I faced. I felt trapped between faith, illness and misunderstanding, like two people in one body. One wanting to shine God's love, the other sabotaging everything. Therapy misunderstood the medical roots of my symptoms, mistaking them instead for psychological trauma or fatherlessness. I internalised shame and guilt and struggled with a desperate need for autonomy, unaware that medication and misdiagnoses were the true causes of my symptoms. I began struggling with anorexia and thoughts, not realising these too were side effects. Yet in the midst of it all, I sensed God's hand preserving my life for a purpose. As a young teenager, I trusted a male church leader who later betrayed that trust. Though prosecution wanted to pursue serious criminal charges, church leadership blamed me and supported the perpetrator instead, claiming they heard from God. Mum and I were shunned and bullied, but chose to stand for truth. We later found a new church that taught grace, the undeserved, unearned, unmerited favour of God. I learned that as a Christian, God's approval rested not on my performance, but on Jesus' perfect sacrifice. For the first time, I found hope. In a new school, I also found inclusion and encouragement from students and teachers alike. That lifted my spirits considerably. Driven by a desire to impact the world for Jesus, I attended Bible college after school. College was different to what I'd imagined. The loudest theology turned my world upside down. This theology insisted that unless I was physically healed right here, right now, I wasn't in the will of God and He couldn't use me. It claimed that it was my choice to accept healing or not, and that the enemy had interfered with God's creation of me. I actually began wondering if I was human or a demon, a creation of the enemy. I was instructed to speak out that I was healed despite my reality. Many told me that if I had enough faith, I wouldn't do my medical procedure nor follow doctor's advice. I ended up in hospital, 2 days away from acute renal failure. The New Thought movement ideology almost cost me my life. My inability to sift through theologies well enough to determine which teachings were truly biblical caused me to become afraid of Christians and afraid of attending any church for a few years after college. Mum and I spent that few years reading the Bible together and writing my autobiography as a way to process my life. Eventually, I found the most amazing church community where I am theologically safe and belong. At 23, I was diagnosed with an overactive nervous system to the level equivalent of a war veteran, and I began attending a PTSD support group. At 24, a disability specialised psychiatrist diagnosed me with attention deficit disorder. When the ADHD medication took effect, it felt like a fog lifted, like a non-surgical brain transplant. For the first time, my mind was clear. The psychiatrist said, "Your life has been far too pathologised. No more therapy." I had by that point had 15 years of therapy. I was still vomiting a few times each day and would by now freeze if I even left the house alone, paranoid that someone might attack me. Hallucinations and all the other horrible things had escalated to the ridiculous by now. My local GP finally connected the dots. All these symptoms were medication side effects. Within days of stopping the drug, every physical and mental health side effect that had been put down to psychological trauma vanished. After 21 years on the medication, I was finally in my right mind. My GP had told me that it could take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years or more for me to make a full recovery, if I did. I had 5 days of cold turkey withdrawals, and then the mess that I had known to be me was gone. The freedom I felt was immense, but so was the grief. It took time to grieve the 21 years of what I'd lost, but now there was no time to waste, no time to die.
There's a grace when the heart is under fire. Another way when the walls are closing in.
After enduring more than 2 decades of often debilitating medication side effects, finally being free of them at 24 and effectively treated for attention deficit disorder had been remarkable. Yet the challenges I'd navigated throughout those years had left their mark. For many years I'd believed I was insane, desperate for help yet suspecting I was beyond it. I had been listened to but never heard, looked at but rarely seen, comprehended but not understood. I had learned that trusting people came at the price of my safety, physically, emotionally, psychologically, medically, and spiritually. I had felt totally alone, completely dissociated, living as if in a fog, where everything seemed unclear and unreal. The world, me, people, even God. I fondly refer to the years that followed as my rehab years. As I read my Bible now, the puzzle pieces began coming together. Another in the Fire is the 4th song on my album, Silver Dove. It is a song of gratitude for God's presence with me amidst each of life's fires. He hadn't always taken me out of the fire, but he had met me in it. He had always known where to find me and how to break through. He'd been there when I was lonely or ashamed, when I'd been misunderstood or was at fault. Nothing was hidden from him. Even darkness wasn't dark to him. In the middle of my pain, in the middle of my shame, in the middle of every challenge, he never looked away. Instead, he wept with me. That was the greatest comfort to know. With perfect orchestration and perfect timing, God began placing people in my world from all walks of life who were brave enough to be vulnerable and share their stories with me. God taught me that I wasn't alone. I learned that these people were either in or had been in fires often not dissimilar to mine. It was like Jesus himself spoke through their eyes and said, "I'm here. I've been here the whole time." His hand of restoration has been undeniable. His love overwhelming.
Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart.
The 5th track on my album, Silver Dove, called Be Thou My Vision, became my prayer for renewed perspective. My prayer that I might see others and myself through God's eyes. I read somewhere that children with attention deficit disorder typically hear approximately 20,000 more negative messages by the age of 12 than those without ADHD. I had come to know myself and others in a very negative light. I'd been consumed by self-hatred and self-destructive thoughts. Now I had the clarity of mind to look to Jesus when I struggled, rather than tearing myself apart. I learned to have compassion on the younger me that I'd been so harsh on. I could now speak life over my younger self, and to anyone else going through something similar, I'd say, "You're not a failure or a bad person. You have ADHD, you just don't know it yet. You're not losing your mind, you're on medication and these are side effects. Your symptoms are not your choice. They are not who you are. Your heart is who you are. What you're going through is not your fault. God is with you personally right now. He will never leave you or abandon you. You have a purpose in who you are." As I looked into the decisions and responses of others throughout my childhood and early adulthood, I saw a bigger picture of why things had been the way they had. Understanding the perspectives of others helped me to make more sense of my life. I had to come to understand that people didn't know I had ADHD or side effects at play, so forgiving and letting go of my anger toward them was a big thing. Forgiveness of myself and others brought profound peace.
I won't be silenced. You can't keep me quiet. Won't tremble when you try it.
Originally, Speechless, the 6th song on my album, was my fight song, my declaration that I would no longer be silenced. But over time, Speechless evolved into a journey of gaining a sense of self and a sense of autonomy. For years, I'd been taught to suppress negative emotions, to pretend strength instead of expressing truth. Looking back, I can trace a persistent lesson taught throughout my life, that my negative emotions were a flaw in my character. They were treated as unnatural or invalid or unwarranted, and as signals that I needed to adjust something within myself. My feelings were dismissed, minimised or irrationalised away. Anytime I felt belittled, undermined or rejected or whatever, the attention of others turned toward what was supposedly wrong with me for feeling those things, or toward my supposed lack of courage or confidence, rather than the poor behaviour of others. Emotions were mostly filtered through neurotypical expectations or rigid theological interpretations. Even cognitive behavioural therapy and neurolinguistic programming and the narratives attached to those pushed me towards silence, teaching me to bury my emotions rather than understand or express them. Then I discovered Jefferson Fisher, a trial attorney who teaches healthy communication. His insights helped me to identify emotions, boundaries, and needs. I learned that emotions aren't weaknesses to suppress, they are part of being human. I discovered how to identify and communicate what I feel and need with grace and confidence. Through Jefferson, God gave me my voice back. Now I am no longer speechless. For Good is the 7th song on my album Silver Dove, and it's a dedication to those who walked with me through recovery. Family, friends, mentors and encouragers, those who saw me, heard me and loved me as I was. This song is my way of saying thank you for bringing the deepest joy of real connection and acceptance. You have been Jesus' hands and feet. You carried me when I didn't have the strength to do so myself. You brought the heart of Jesus to life for me. You understood. Your story validated and redeemed mine. You acknowledged your humanity. Through you, God shattered my loneliness and hopelessness. I am forever grateful for you. You taught me just how deeply Jesus understands. You showed me that I wasn't evil, but had a broken heart. You showed me that brokenness isn't a liability, but an asset in God's hands. So much of my freedom and who I am today is made of what I've learned from you. You've rewritten my journey. Because I knew you, I have been changed for good. Mighty Wings is the final track on my album Silver Dove and celebrates complete freedom, the release of guilt and shame. The lyric, I want to ride on the silver dove far into the night, symbolises my mission to reach into the darkness and help others find freedom. Every hardship has prepared me to soar on God's mighty wings. My journey, marked by struggle, faith and redemption, is the heartbeat of Silver Dove. It's a story of hope rising from hardship, of beauty emerging from brokenness, and of a God who never let go. Silver Dove is for anyone who has ever felt misunderstood, silenced, or alone. My prayer is that these songs remind you that no story is wasted, no wound is unseen, and no life is beyond redemption. Through every song, I invite you to discover the same freedom, grace, and love that changed my life.